Great.
Yeah, all good, ready to go?
Yes, we are. And so if anyone who is not speaking, if you could just go on mute during the presentation, and then you can come off mute to ask questions after the presentation has concluded. And the recording has begun, so go ahead and take it away.
Sure.
Cool. Thank you so much. So maybe we should just start by introducing ourselves.
Yeah, sounds good.
So my name is Katja, and I am responsible for marketing at Dynasource. And I'm here today with Hugo.
Yeah, with me. Hi, I'm Hugo, product owner here at Dynasource. First of all, thanks for the opportunity for us to have a quick chat here and close off the series, I guess.
That's what we're doing.
Yep.
So before we really get to the closing off, I think we should just have a look at the stuff we've heard until now. Because we've had 3 interesting weeks with 3 great speakers talking about different topics relating to the disruption of the IT services channel.
Yep, absolutely.
And in the first week, we heard from our CEO, Paul White, who was talking about the change in the distribution model, that in essence, he, with a very long experience from the channel, has seen a change in how the products have been pushed to market to how they're now being pulled by the customer.
Yeah.
Then we heard from Dana Wilmer from CloudSpeed, who was essentially saying that there is a cash flow squeeze happening for IT service providers. And maybe, Hugo, you can elaborate on why was that?
Right. So what Dana talked about with the cash flow squeeze is how the marketing budgets, R&D budgets are all going up, but the margins are going down everywhere, especially for the IT services. So what's happening is basically there's less and less money going around.
Exactly. And then we heard from Mike Ward from Tech Data last week, who is one of the companies that are trying to deal with this change. And they essentially said that they're trying to handle this transformation to cloud by focusing on intellectual property to differentiate themselves.
Yes.
Or as you call it, you had a very good term for that. That they're betting on what was it called? Brainware instead?
So, yeah. The word I use is brainware. Yeah. So I guess it's a good move by Tech Data, and they're definitely not unique in the sense that many companies in the industry are moving towards that, moving away from hardware and software, moving more towards intellectual property or brainware in the sense that both that it differentiates you more. So there's more specialization, which allows you to be, I guess, gain a competitive edge against the others.
Exactly. And I think that constitutes both a great opportunity, but also paired with the other changes in the market, quite a big challenge that we're all trying to handle.
Absolutely.
But we've heard from 3 very experienced people from the industry. Hugo and I, we're both part of what would be called the millennial generation. So we have our own view of how we see this, because we have not experienced this change, all of it at least, firsthand. We've sort of come into the industry with more fresh eyes. You most recently, Hugo?
The freshest eyes.
The freshest eyes
yes.
of all.
So very recently, I actually only joined this industry at the start of this year, so almost going on 12 months now. And it not just being my first experience with the IT industry, but with working in general. So it's the freshest of the fresh eyes. Mm-hmm. As you were saying, the 3 speakers that we've heard in the past couple of weeks, they've all been able to speak from experience, which I guess is a big help. But just coming into the industry this year, I guess I have to do with the data that we have over the last 20, 30 years, however long you want to look at. Mm-hmm. And I think one of the first things that you notice, or at least I've noticed, is it's almost a little bit ironic how we're in an industry where arguably there's lots of high-tech, cutting-edge technology going around and modern things happening, but still the services that are delivered around it in the industry really haven't haven't changed at all.
No, it's like the industry is one that drives the change, but it has itself remained unchanged.
Yes, exactly.
For a very, very long time.
Yes.
Yeah. And that's the same thing I see coming into this company. And I think that's also one of the things that make it very interesting to be here. Because if we look at some data points of how our generation responds to this, let's say,
right,
we can see that already in 2014, 46% of B2B buying decisions had a millennial, so that would be a Hugo or a myself, leading that, or at least having a big part or a big role to play in the decision-making process. And even if you see the growth that's been between 2012 and 2014, I guess we can safely conclude that that number hasn't gotten any smaller since then.
No, which, it makes sense, and people might think when they hear the word millennial generation that it's that we're talking about really, really young people, but essentially, this generation is also growing up and will eventually end up making most of the buying decisions.
Exactly.
So, we're nearing that with 46%.
And our way of approaching decision making, or at least what we expect when we are making decisions, is basically rooted in the fact that we've grown up with the internet.
Yeah, absolutely.
So not only are we seeing a world that as a whole has increased its internet usage quite a lot, we as a generation are also using it a lot more for everything we do.
Right.
And I pulled some data for this because I thought it was quite interesting. And now this is not going to be a list of stats, but at least I wanted to highlight that 62% of the decision makers in the B2B buying process say that they are solely developing or finalizing their vendor list based on digital content. So essentially they go online to do research and to narrow down which vendors they want to buy from. And I think part of that we see is also the growing trend in searches, like we've included here, the search trends on Google for Azure services. But we see that that's more or less exploded over the last decade. It really indicates that people take their searches online when they're looking to make these decisions.
Yes.
And it's also interesting that 71% of B2B researchers start their research with a generic search. So they don't just go out and look for a very specific company because they just don't know at that stage.
Right, which I guess makes sense, right? Because we've grown up having the option to go online and look for whatever it is that you're looking for, whether it be a product or a service. Most of the time, you can find everything, all of the information you want, on some place on the internet.
Exactly.
You might not start out knowing exactly what it is. So starting with a generic search, it makes sense. You'll narrow down as you go. But in the very least, you're definitely expecting the information.
And I think in many industries, we can already do that. If we're looking for a hotel to go on vacation, we can safely go online, do plenty of research, find plenty of reviews, and figure out what's the best option for us.
Absolutely.
And I think our generation, we've just come to expect that that's the way to roll, more or less.
Right. Yeah, and definitely looking at these numbers, we can kind of see some kind of inevitability going on, right? These trends don't really leave any room for interpretation, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Won't slow down or become any less.
And I think what we also see from the IT services industry is that the attempt to counter or accommodate for this trend is the increased spend on marketing.
Right.
We also see that, for instance, another interesting data statistics is the ad spend on Google Ads has grown 18% year over year just in this quarter compared to last year. So it's huge how much money and how much budget is being allocated to capturing all these people who are looking online for information, essentially.
Yeah.
So I think that's a little bit how we look at it, that we see, well, we expect to find things online. And to maybe put it into context of why that's relevant here and why we see that as interesting in terms of digital disruption, we can have a look at other industries that have been through sort of like a similar transformation just in our lifetime.
I mean, at this point, it's been almost every industry except ours. So there's
you can say that.
There's lots of examples to go around.
Mm-hmm.
and I guess they all share sort of a common theme in that in every case there's an emerging trend, oftentimes of people wanting more information easily available to them, and there's so many examples of companies who either they ignored the trend or they saw it as a fad or a passing phase.
Yeah, I was thinking, maybe not an example of a company that didn't respond to an increased need for information, but at least companies that did not respond to very significant changes to consumer behavior, which is a little bit what we're seeing here too.
Yeah.
A good example of that would be Blockbuster, which I hope you remember.
I do, barely. On different ends of the spectrum, but for the millennial generation, I guess.
At least I recall going down looking up the VHS tapes that were the most interesting at that Saturday night, and then it changed suddenly, very abruptly, to DVDs.
Yeah, that's when I came by, yeah.
That's when you came by. That was your first visit to the Blockbuster.
Exactly.
And then to the Blockbuster just not really being there anymore.
Yeah. Because
we took our viewing habits online.
We took it online, yeah. We simply didn't need them anymore.
More or less.
Yeah.
And that's maybe the extreme of how bad it can go.
Right.
Another example, which has been mentioned time and time again, is Kodak.
Yeah, it's a popular example, but I guess for good reason.
Yeah.
They're an example of a company that they saw digital cameras as a passing trend or a passing fad, and they didn't get on board either in time or at all. Mm-hmm. And it did end up costing them in the sense that they got passed by competitors who were maybe a little bit more ahead of the curve, or with the curve at least.
Exactly. And I think for the both of us, the case is that we have joined this industry because we see that this curve is also happening here, and there is an opportunity to be part of the change that has to come.
Right. And I guess the question that we have on the top of the slide here really fits the bill, right? I mean,
yeah.
Why should this industry be the odd one out when it comes to making that transformation?
Especially when it's sort of the one to, if you want to say, blame for the disruption that's happening in a lot of other cases.
At least you expect it to be some kind of shining example of how it should be done.
Yes. So we both work here at Dynasource doing very different things. I say my personal reason for joining has been to be part of this disruption,
right.
To be able to help create transparency for all the stakeholders that are in this industry, to make it possible for people like ourselves who are making decisions, buying decisions, or creating a vendor list, whatever it is, to make it easier for them to figure out who is actually the best person or company to collaborate with.
Right.
Which one should I choose?
Yeah, especially that last point I definitely connect with when I look at how when I'm in scenarios when I'm the consumer, how do I behave? What do I expect when I want to find either some kind of product or service? Mm-hmm. I want to be able to grab my laptop, flip it open, spend an X amount of time looking for what I need to find, but I do expect to find it somewhere. I don't want to be calling an endless amount of sales reps to get some kind of paywalled information or information that's hidden behind somewhere. I just want to have it easily accessible.
And not necessarily be persuaded by the company that has the most marketing money,
right.
But the company that's actually the best fit for the need that you have.
Exactly.
Yeah. So that's the reason why we're both here. Essentially, we put down answering the call of the millennial decision makers, which is maybe a little bit marketing talk, but we see ourselves as part of that we are the same audience we are talking to by working here, by creating transparency to different layers in the IT services industry, to allowing everybody from a Microsoft through to their whole partner channel to be able to better understand what is each partner capable of and where are the strengths, the weaknesses, so on and so forth. Yeah. Because we believe that when we have this transparency that we've come to expect sort of in any decision that we make, we expect to find it and be able to find it rather easily.
Yeah, exactly. Mm-hmm. So being able to facilitate that for other people who will be looking for an implementation of whatever it may be, some kind of IT service, I think it's great to be able to contribute to actually giving people that option to not call around 500 times before you get the information.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because we don't want to talk to the salespeople,
Right.
essentially.
Essentially.
We want to find it ourselves.
Yeah.
So I think with that, that's the story we've had to tell about why we're here, how we see the IT services evolving, the services industry evolving,
Yeah.
to cater for a generation that expects that information is at their fingertips, essentially.
Absolutely.
So with that, we will like to say thank you all for taking the time to listening.
Yep,
And
absolutely.
if you have any questions or comments, we're happy to.
Now's the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you both so much. That was great. It definitely got my wheels turning as what I'm going to call myself as being an elder millennial.
That's fair. It works.
But still in the millennial generation. But I'm curious to hear your thoughts on. I think that you make up a lot of valid points around the diversity of thought and the way of doing business by generation. And I'd just be curious to hear your thoughts on, having worked with different folks throughout your career who are at different ages and stages. What are the differences you see in your everyday interactions in business based off of, these different generations of folks that you're working with?
Well, I would say, without really stigmatizing people for their age, that it's definitely more that I would say Hugo and we do not expect, for instance, that we have to print anything. We don't expect that it will take us quite a lot of time to find the information we need or get answers. We're quite used to instant gratification in a way, which for better and worse, I would say.
Yeah.
Sometimes it can lead to impatience. But definitely that there's this digital first mentality that comes very naturally to us.
Yeah.
Yeah. So in that same vein, like looking forward to the next generation that's coming after us into the workforce, what are some lessons do you think our generation and those that preceded us can impart and mentor to the next generation of professionals, especially in the context of how we do business and how technology has disrupted almost every major industry and caused some pretty radical changes for the good, but also some things that maybe haven't been so good.
Right. I think there's always going to be the fine line between, I guess, maximum transparency and access to everything and it becoming too much, maybe. So wanting to strike a balance there. I guess in the end, for me, it's about ease of use in the technology that you use. So that's, I think, something that we need to learn to optimize for. Making sure that the technology that we create, the technology that we create, that it actually serves the users that we have in mind for that technology. So we want to make it as easy as possible for those actual users, and give them the right level of everything. So trying to strike that balance, I guess.
Awesome. I don't want to monopolize with all the questions. Anyone else on the phone want to ask a question? Alrighty. With that, I suppose we are done. Thank you so much for your time. I greatly appreciate it. I like the perspective that was brought in this presentation. It was very appealing, very interesting to me. So thank you for your time. We greatly appreciate it. We will be posting this on Microsoft Partner Community shortly and look forward to doing further collaborations with you all.
Absolutely. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much.
All right. Take care.
Yep.